Good afternoon. It gives me great pleasure to welcome this very eminent panel. We are here to discuss a pretty interesting subject today, the art of multiplication of wealth. Investing is more art than a science, Howard Marks is supposed to have said. So while of course there are many numbers, theories, models that we do use in investment management, if investing was strictly a science, then why do some money managers deliver such superior investment performance in the same period of time? We believe that this is explained by the art aspect of investing, which comes from the skill, the judgment, the decision making, and the intuition of the investment management team. When I look back, the PMS industry as we know it took off in 1993 when SEBI notified the portfolio manager regulations, and 2 decades later, the AIF regulations were introduced. Now, when I look at this panel, all of us have actually started our career in the decade of the 90s. And as such, we've had a ringside seat, not just to the exponential growth in AUM and the number of players in the industry, as we can see from a filled room here, but also the increasing sophistication that products and services have seen. And of course, for the explosion of the number of HNIs and ultra HNIs in India, I think this was a category of products that saw very, very rapid adoption. I think today when we look at any large client's portfolio, there would not be any client who would not have some meaningful allocation to alternate products. So with that, I'd like to go to the panel. Mr. Sareen, if I may start with you. You've been in markets a really long time. What is your approach to the art of multiplication of wealth in terms of your investment philosophy and framework?
Yeah, so I think one has obviously evolved one style of investing. And over the last 28 odd years, what one has understood is that do not put all your eggs in any one approach or all in one basket. So what we try to do is we have quality stocks, we have value stocks, and we have growth stocks. So being agnostic about a particular style has helped us a lot.
Thank you. We appreciate short answers as well because I've been told that we're running short of time. So thank you for that. Surjit, my next question is for you.
Yes.
Given your philosophy of focusing on the fundamentals of companies, do you believe that investing is an art as well as a science? And what is your approach to the art of multiplying wealth?
First of all, thank you everyone for attending this session, and thank you PMS Bazaar for giving us the opportunity. So as you rightly said, there is no straightforward answer, right? It's a combination of art and science. If I look at science initially, it's about the process, it's about the investment framework. And just to give you an example, at PGIM, what we do is basically when we build a portfolio, it's a quality portfolio. And when we say quality, we define it with 3-4 parameters. Quickly, it's basically minimum revenue in terms of top line, ROC of around last 10 years, cash flow consistency, and a market leader or ability to gain market share. So if you have this kind of a framework, we have seen that with a concentrated portfolio. So if you look at PGIM as a house, on PMS side, we have almost 20 stocks as the average number of holdings in our portfolio. And wherever we have conviction, our top 10 holdings is 60 to 65%. So from that angle, it's a science. But as you rightly said, I mean, with the experience, with the research team, and with the investment framework, it also becomes an art of which stock to look at, which sector to look at, and how much allocation you need to do to that particular stock or sector.
Fantastic. That makes a lot of sense. Milan ji, आप market में 30 साल से हैं और ये 30 साल में if you had invested 1 crore in just the Sensex, today that number would be 30 crores. तो ये 30 साल के जर्नी में आपका क्या अप्रोच रहा है क्लाइंट का वेल्थ मल्टीप्लाई करने के लिए?
मुझे जो सबसे बड़ा दिक्कत जो लग रहा है हर एक इन्वेस्टर्स के लिए या इन्वेस्टमेंट के लिए वो ये है कि नॉर्मली जब कोई भी बंदा मान लो कि मैंने कोई पीएमएस को पैसा दिया कि भाई आप क्रिएट करो रिटर्न और उसने अच्छा पैसा बनाया, 1 साल के बाद 2 साल के बाद मैंने और पैसा दिया, उसने अच्छा पैसा बनाया, 3-4-5 साल के बाद मैं ये मानने लगता हूँ कि ये बंदा भगवान है और हम उसको पैसा देते हैं और कॉन्स्टेंटली वो ग्रो कर रहा है। पर सबको पता है, इवन वो बंदे को भी पता है कि मैं भगवान नहीं हूँ और कोई सिचुएशन ऐसी आती है तब जब वो रिटर्न परफॉर्म नहीं कर पाता है, क्योंकि हर एक चीज़ हमेशा चलती नहीं है और हर एक चीज़ हमेशा फेल नहीं होती है। तो वो सिनारियो में होता ये है कि फिर जब कोई इन्वेस्टर बहुत बड़ा पैसा लेके आता है पीएमएस होल्डर के पास या कोई भी फंड मैनेजर के पास और तभी उनका परफॉर्मेंस नहीं होता है। और फिर उनको लगता है कि ये मेरे काम का नहीं है। आगे बहुत बार बहुत पैसा कमाया, पर क्योंकि मैं 5 रुपया लेके आया, 25 रुपया लेके आया, 300 रुपया लेके आया, फिर मैं सब चीज़ बेच के यहाँ पैसा लेके आया और मार्केट उसी का वेट कर रहा है कि, और तभी वो अपना कलर दिखाता है। तो वो सिचुएशन में पैसा नहीं मिलता है। तो मेरा ये फील है कि हर एक इन्वेस्टर को ये चीज़ केयर रखना चाहिए कि आप कहीं पे भी इन्वेस्टमेंट करो, एक अमाउंट तय करो, उससे ज़्यादा पैसा हम इन्वेस्ट नहीं करेंगे, नो मैटर ऑफ कोई भी रिटर्न क्यों ना हो। तो मेरा ये ओपिनियन है।
Thank you, Milanji. Anil, my next question is for you. Your stated house philosophy is invest in what you know, with a great degree of focus on risk management. So, what has been your approach to the art of multiplying your investors' wealth?
So thank you, and congratulations to PMS Bazaar for, I think, a very well-organized event. What I'm going to tell you is slightly counterintuitive. Saying you're talking about multiplication, and actually, my view is that of managing risk, right? So our philosophy is about how do we deliver a risk-adjusted return to our clients, right? And why is it important, and why is risk management important? We have a very detailed risk process out there. Before we invest, we do forensic, and after as well, we track it and stuff. Risk management helps you ensure that you don't lose money, right? Because at times you have your winners, but you also have your losers, which take money out from you. So I think that's the first point of saying that yes, even while you are multiplying your money, you need to manage your risk well. And of course, the second part of it is actually about growth, right? So, and our style is that we look for growth at a value, right? So while we look at various parameters, ROC, revenue growth, we have a screening mechanism, all of those to try and look at the best growing companies. We also look at stuff on the valuation side. So we there were discussions here before on when to exit. We like to do it especially when things are good, and we position size when things run up really high, then we sort of reduce it. So I think it's a combination of managing risk as well as looking at growth, looking at your stocks, looking at factors which can sort of multiply.
Sure, I think we always do tend to forget at least one half of the risk-return equation, so I understand where you're coming from. Anil, my follow-up question was for you. You also have an artificial intelligence-based strategy that you run, and today we did hear on one of the earlier panels where Bharat Bhai and Kanika were, I think, on the two opposite ends of the spectrum. What is your take on whether investing is a science, and how important is cutting-edge technology, say like artificial intelligence, important in investment management?
Yeah, so I like to de-risk for myself as well, right? And also for my own industry. I think we just saw that how technology is disrupting, and I would be surprised if technology disrupt our industry as well. And so from that standpoint, I think that over a period, systems are going to get better. Machine learning, AI is going to become challenging, and over so I don't know, 10 years from now, will we be in the same place, right? So to me, that's also de-risking my business, right? But yeah, so while we are significantly looking at it based on fundamental approach, investing, maybe a little bit of old style, looking at market cycles, etc., one wants to also keep an option open that systems could get better, and when they get better, can we actually incorporate some of those into it? And I think that's where it will evolve, right? So how do you use systems a lot more in your investing process itself to help you make a better decision?
I agree. I think, we've heard from a lot of panelists today that technology has been one of the biggest disruptors of every industry. And I think we would be perhaps unwise to believe that ours is the only industry where technology will not disrupt. So I think it is important to keep an eye on what's not the future, but I think that reality is already here. Surjit, my next question was for you. I want to ask you, what are your top picks in terms of themes and sectors at this point of time? Is consumer discretionary, for example, one of the big picks that you are betting on?
Yeah, to answer your second question first, right? Just to give you some numbers. Today, if you look at discretionary spend, as a percentage of overall consumption, it's going up. And we have already touched a threshold of around $2,000 a mark, right? So if you look at retail or autos, for example, these all industries are doing well. People, just to quote one example, today in autos also, if you look at the top end variants of SUVs, which are a high end vehicles, 20 lakh, 25 lakh plus, the incremental demand is coming for that sector, right? So the discretionary spend, given that we already have a good amount of aspirations and the rising income levels, I think the discretionary spend is here to stay. Today, if you go to anywhere in Mumbai, in any of the malls, you will be shocked to see the kind of consumption happening, the kind of people coming into the malls, right? So the retail and auto as a sector on a discretionary side, I think, would do well over a period of time. Secondly, if you look at other sectors where we are quite bullish from a house perspective, one is industrials, is a very broad sector, but broadly, if you look at the whole funda of manufacturing, so if you look at last 1 year, government is very keen on PLI schemes, specifically on the manufacturing side. So in last 1 year, there have been almost 14 instances where the schemes have been launched, and the overall amount is almost 30 billion plus. So I believe compared to a service sector, which used to be at the forefront of Indian economy, maybe next 5 to 10 years will belong to manufacturing. And within that, if I dissect, there could be sectors like defense, like bearings, like capex-oriented sectors, which will do well. So industrials, followed by retail, autos, and then if you look at building materials, which is a quasi play on the residential real estate, these are the sectors where we currently overweight and we are quite bullish on.
Great, thank you. Mr. Sareen, if I may ask you the same question, what do you like the most about Indian equities right now? What are some of your top bets and picks?
So I would like to start with a caveat that no investment remains very interesting beyond a point in time. So with that, I think it needs to be a combination of intrinsic worth being good, like there is growth happening, there is change happening, and the ball is moving to my side of the court, etc. Those things are necessary, but at the same time, there should be a valuation comfort also. I mean, there's no point buying a great company at a great price, and then you have to defend every time when the price doesn't move. So I think one should have a distinction between a great business and a great stock. Now, with that kind of a background, currently we feel in terms of the opportunity, house manufacturers, I'm using the term deliberately because real estate has many different meanings. So people whose business it is to take money from retail, house purchasers and make it into a house and give it back to them. So I'm talking about, let's say, a Godrej or a Oberoi, those kind of people, the house manufacturers. Why do we say that? Why do we like that? Is that in any industry, you need two things, entry barriers and pricing power. So entry barriers are anyway there. There is a brand. Over the last 10 years or so, we have had so many bad experiences that nobody in their right mind today is going to hand over money to a lesser known builder that you take the money today from me and deliver the house to me after 3 or 4 years. So that brand, that trust, that ability to deliver that has been established is a great entry barrier. And from there flows the pricing power. If the housing demand is going up by a certain percentage, the number of suppliers is shrinking at maybe 5 times that percentage. So it is not a problem at all to increase prices if they are. So that is what we find. So entry barriers and pricing power, if you put it together, last point comes the valuation. I mean, like I said, there's no point in buying a great company at an even greater price. You make money by the difference of the movement, not by hero worshipping how great the entrepreneur is. That is a great business. But we are not in the business of journalism. We are in the business of delivering return. So the return comes from a margin of safety. So typically, let's say any good industry today, let's say a company that is making cell phones, for Apple or whatever, you are paying a fancy multiple on 4 years later and hoping that the business will continue tomorrow. We also have many of those stocks in the quality bucket. But where you want to make money is that think about valuation. So let's say a specialty chemical company will trade at 25, 30 times EV EBITDA. A retail company will trade at those kind of multiples. The average house manufacturer, believe it or not, is trading at 12 to 13 times EV EBITDA. It is because the accounting is done in a certain manner and the general lay investor is not yet familiar with it, that you feel that, oh, iska PE jada hai, vagera, vagera. So I think with that, I would rest my case. So pricing power, entry barrier, and cheap valuation. And this happens to be the longest cycle. In any business in India, there is a 3-year cycle, 4-year cycle, but this happens to be a 8 to 10-year cycle. So you enter at the beginning of the cycle, valuation in your favor with entry barriers and pricing power, you have a good chance of making money.
That does sound like a good equation. Today, we've also heard from many other panels on the two opposing views of, do you stay because you believe in the company, and a good stock may not necessarily be a great company and vice versa. So totally agree with you there. Milan ji, next question is directed to you. आपने ये इतने सालों में जो आप ट्रैक कर रहे हैं, what are some of the new age risks जो अभी recently आपको लग रहा है आ रहा है, और क्लाइंट्स के लिए आप ये रिस्क कैसे मैनेज कर रहे हैं?
अभी हम ये एक एक्सपीरियंस कर रहे हैं कि कोई भी बंदा अगर सेल्स में जाता है, स्पेशली पीएमएस के लिए, तो रिटर्न की जब बात करता है तब कस्टमर पहले ये कहता है कि अगर मैं कोई ऑप्शंस वाले को पैसा देता हूँ तो बहुत बढ़िया रिटर्न वो प्रोवाइड करके देता है, आप जो बता रहे हो इसके सामने कुछ भी नहीं है। तो उनके दिमाग में ये नहीं बैठता है कि फिर मैं क्या बोलूँ कि क्या करूँ, क्योंकि वो बात करता है कि मुझे 40% रिटर्न ऑप्शंस वाले क्रिएट करके दे रहे हैं, तो और आप 15-20 की बात कर रहे हो तो क्यों आपको पैसा दे। पर यहाँ पे मुझे एक पॉइंट मुझे लगता है कि मुझे कहना चाहिए, क्योंकि ऑप्शंस में कई बार होता क्या है कि बहुत से फंड मैनेजर जो शेयर करते हैं ना डेटा, वो उसका पास्ट परफॉर्मेंस शेयर करते हैं कि लास्ट 10 ईयर्स में उससे ज़्यादा ड्रॉडाउन नहीं देखा है और रिटर्न बहुत अच्छा देखा है। पर मेरा ये ओपिनियन है कि डेरिवेटिव्स में कभी हम ड्रॉडाउन से बात नहीं कर सकते, आपको प्रोबेबल लॉस गिनना पड़ेगा, क्योंकि कोई इवेंट ऐसी आ गई रनिंग मार्केट में और कोई बंदा ऑप्शन बेच के बैठा है और कोई ऐसी इवेंट आ गई, मान लो कि इन बिटवीन हम बैठे और मोदी जी हमारे बीच नहीं रहे, तो वो सिनारियो में क्या प्राइस होगा आप मान सकते हो सकता है 2 दिन तक मार्केट ही नहीं खुले। तो वो टाइम में अगर कोई किसी ने अगर ऑप्शन बेचा है तो उसका क्या होगा आप बहुत अच्छे से समझ सकते हो। तो मेरा ये ओपिनियन है कि उस टाइम प्रोबेबल लॉस गिनना पड़ेगा, और प्रोबेबल लॉस गिनने का एक ही रास्ता है कि वो स्क्रिप्ट का मार्जिन आप काउंट करो। तो जब कोई भी बंदा वो काउंट करेगा ना, तो मैं श्योर हूँ कि हार्डली कोई पोर्टफोलियो 30% से ज़्यादा बच पाएगा। किसी ने अगर 1 करोड़ कोई ऑप्शन ट्रेडर को दिया है तो 70 लाख मिनिमम लॉस आएगा। तो मेरा ये एक्सपीरियंस रहा है कि अगर कोई भी फंड मैनेजर अगर 15% रिटर्न जनरेट कर सकता है तो वो आपका 30% पैसा ले जा सकता है। तो आज कोई बंदा 40% जनरेट कर रहा है तो मान के चलिए कि वो आपका 80% पैसा ले जाएगा। तो कहीं पे भी अगर आप सेल्स पे हो और रुके हो और आप बोल रहे हो कि मैं 15-20% रिटर्न दे रहा हूँ, तो आप क्लाइंट को कन्विंस कीजिए कि आपका 35-40% से ज़्यादा ड्रॉडाउन नहीं आएगा। पर कोई आपको 35% क्रिएट कर रहा है तो वो आपका 70 ले जाएगा, और वो गारंटी है कि ले जाएगा। भले अभी 5-10 साल 20 साल में ऐसी कोई बड़ी इवेंट स्पेशली इंट्राडे मार्केट में आई नहीं है, और कोई गारंटी नहीं है कि वो आएगी नहीं। तो ये बहुत ज़रूरी है। हमने कोविड के टाइम देखा है कि बहुत सा पोर्टफोलियो हमारा नीचे गया है और उसके बाद हम कवर कर पा रहे हैं। तो ये एक जब भी सेल्स में किसी को भी ये प्रॉब्लम आता है तो मुझे ये दिखता है कि आप ऐसे आंसर कर रहे हो, क्योंकि एक तो ये मार्केट भी बहुत बड़ा है, इक्विटी क्रिएशन एक बहुत बड़ा मार्केट है, इसके सामने अगर ऑप्शंस का अगर मार्केट देखो तो बहुत छोटा है। तो ये भी एक पॉइंट है कि आज बहुत बड़ी मार्केट को मैनेज करना और 40-50 हज़ार करोड़ के मार्केट को मैनेज करना, वहाँ पे भी ये दिक्कत है। पर मैंने ये रिस्क एक्सपीरियंस किया है।
तो मिलन जी, आप भी रिस्क रिटर्न इक्वेशन की बात कर रहे हैं यहाँ पे, बिल्कुल ठीक। Anil, my next question is for you. We are seeing globally that a lot of large investors are incorporating the whole ESG metrics as part of their investment decisions. And this is catching on in India in quite a significant way as well with some of the larger clients. I know as investment managers, all of you do focus a lot on the G, which is the governance side of things. But what is your view on the social and the environmental aspects? How is your team seeing this in terms of, the Indian investing context?
Sorry, I'm going a lot contrarian in my answers as well. uh, See, actually, I believe that themes like these, some of it you need to see, is it mature enough, right? And from that standpoint, uh, I don't want to put clients' money at risk by, say, searching for a company which is, say, purely in the environmental space, and is it doing a better job? Uh, I think some strategies which are unlisted and private equity may sort of, look at such opportunities, and they may do a good job of them as well. But I don't think our market has the depth to look at companies purely on that particular criteria, right? However, that said and done, and let me give an example as well. Say the solar space, right? I think it grew fantastically well, but I don't think too many companies made money on it, right? And there were a lot of defaults and companies that went bust, whoever set up large solar plants, right? So that is what I was trying to say there. But if I look at it from a philosophy, like, okay, uh, a company in India which is sort of a good quality, well run, the Tata Group, right? ESG will be very high automatically as part of their business itself, right? And so I think that when you look for quality in a business, you look at governance. I think those type of companies also are reasonably good on their ESG framework. Right now, we don't do much, but I think over a period of time, as things mature a little more, I think then definitely, one will want to add some of these criteria to it, because we have ranking criteria of companies with almost 26 parameters, right? So definitely, I think, over a period, we should look to see how to bring ESG parameters as well in.
Sure. So from what I hear, we are still a ways off in India from being able to create a proper framework to evaluate, ESG investing. Sure. Surjit, my next question is to you. In the context of the global headwinds that we are seeing from, negative macros coming through, India is being seen as a relatively safe harbor. And notwithstanding all this talk of decoupling that's going on, it is not possible for any economy to be completely insulated from, say, what's happening in the US or other global markets. So what are some of the steps that you might be taking to insulate or mitigate some of these risks in your portfolios?
So there are two aspects to it, right? One, as you rightly pointed out, if you look at the last 15 years data, the correlation with Indian markets versus US markets is almost zero point 0.7, zero point 0.8. So yes, it's good on paper or on media to say that we have decoupled, but the fact of the matter is we are quite globalized economy where we are linked to global environment also. Uh, One thing is that. Second, because of rising interest rates, as in other panels also people mentioned, that a P multiple or maybe EV by beta, any valuation multiple which we see, obviously because of cost of capital going up, the multiple comes down. So we have to be very cognizant of the fact that there is a possibility going forward that on one hand you might see some slowdown because of global headwinds. At the same time, the PE multiples today, as we speak, are not that reasonable. So there could be a scenario where you might see some correction in the PE multiples also. Now, from a portfolio perspective, given their headwinds and given that Indian economy is doing well, again, just to give an example, if you look at today our nominal GDP growth, right? I mean, it could be 6-7% real GDP growth, around 6% inflation, give and take 50 basis points here and there. So if the nominal GDP growth is 13%, and in the last session, Saurabh did mention that, big is getting bigger. So what's happening is organized segment actually is getting bigger. That's why your Titans of the world, your Asian Paints of the world, even at these scale are growing at 12, 13%, right? So given a 13% nominal GDP growth and these companies doing a better job in terms of managing their businesses, they might grow at a faster clip. So from that angle, relatively, it's better to have more domestic oriented companies in the portfolio rather than having export oriented companies. So if you look at credit growth, personal loan growth, car sales, GST numbers, all are pointing towards a decent recovery in the Indian economy. So broadly, 80-90% of our portfolio is more to do with domestic oriented companies, and export oriented companies will be at best 8 to 10% of our portfolio at this point of time.
Great, thank you. So India is actually being called an island of hope in a sea of despair. And we've also heard a lot of global players saying that this is not just India's decade, this is India's century. मिलन जी, आपके हिसाब से जो एवरेज इंडियन इन्वेस्टर है, उन्होंने ये तेजी में पैसा बनाया है कि नहीं?
मुझे मुझे अभी तक ये क्लैरिटी नहीं आ रही है कि बंदा पैसा तेजी में बनाता है कि मंदी में बनाता है। पर मुझे इतना श्योर पता है कि हाँ, एक बात सही है कि अगर स्टॉक मार्केट में 100 रुपया टूटता है तो सामने 65 रुपया कोई कमा रहा है, क्योंकि बाकी का पैसा हम जैसे लोग ले जाते हैं। पर और ये हमेशा ये रहा है कि मार्केट से 5% लोग ही पैसा कमाए हैं, 95% लोग नॉर्मली पैसा नुकसान करते हैं। पर अमाउंट में ये गैप 65-35 का है, मतलब 65% लोग पैसा कमाते हैं इन टर्म्स ऑफ अमाउंट। तो ये हमेशा होता है। पर तेजी का एक बहुत बड़ा दिक्कत ये होता है कि बहुत सी चीज़ें फिर बाहर घूमती है मार्केट में या सोशल मीडिया में या बहुत सी जगह, कि जब भी तेजी आती है तभी, जैसे जब मंदी का टाइम होता है तभी कोई हमारा कॉल नहीं लेता है, जब तेजी का टाइम आता है तो हम किसी का कॉल नहीं लेते क्योंकि हम बिजी होते हैं। तो ये सिचुएशन आता है तो पता नहीं लगता है कि आदमी को कब इन्वेस्ट किया जाए। पर ये श्योर है कि लॉन्ग टर्म जिसने पैसा कमाया है वही लोगों ने कमाया है जो हमेशा इन्वेस्टेड रहा है। तो ये एकदम क्लियर है कि नो मैटर ऑफ कोई भी टाइम आपका इन्वेस्टमेंट होना चाहिए। बहुत से लोग बहुत स्मार्ट होते हैं और यही वजह से शायद ज़्यादा लॉस करते हैं। मुझे ये लगता है कि ये मार्केट गुजराती में कहने क्या मूर्खाओનું બજાર છે, જેને બહુ અક્કલ નથી ને એ બેસ્ટ છે આ ઇન્વેસ્ટમેન્ટ કરવા માટે। કારણ કે પેલાને બહુ વિચાર આવે, सोच आती है कि भाई अभी करे नहीं करे कब करे, भाई बेटर है तू छोड़ना, तू क्या और कर पाएगा, इससे बेटर है कि यही इन्वेस्ट करते हैं। और हमारे हमारे मैं सूरत से गुजरात से हूँ, तो वहाँ पे एक एरिया है डुमस करके, जहाँ पे बहुत से लोगों के पास बहुत अच्छी प्रॉपर्टीज़ है। और वो बंदा करता क्या है, तो टैक्सी घुमाता है। अभी उसके पास 100 करोड़ का प्रॉपर्टी है, तू क्यों टैक्सी घुमाता है, तू बेटर है कि तू बेच दे। तो उसका पहला क्वेश्चन यही आता है कि मैं बेच के करूँ क्या। अरे तो बेच के आराम कर, मजा कर, तो कि अभी मैं क्या कर रहा हूँ, यही तो कर रहा हूँ। अगर वो बेचारा बेच देता ना, क्योंकि आप देखो मेरा ये एक्सपीरियंस रहा है कि उसके पास 100 रुपये की प्रॉपर्टी आज इसलिए है क्योंकि मान लो कि उसने तो 2 रुपये में लिया हुआ था, वो 100 पे इसलिए रुका है कि उसने बनिए की तरह सोचा नहीं है कि इतना ब्याज मिलता है तो बेच देते हैं, क्योंकि उसको तो 2 रुपये का माल 4 रुपये में बेच देना चाहिए। वो 100 रुपये में इसलिए रोका है कि वो बेच के करेगा क्या। तो जो लोगों के पास आज अच्छा क्वांटिटी में शेयर्स है या पैसा है, वो वही लोगों के पास है जिसने ये सोचा नहीं है कि चलो इतना रिटर्न मिलते निकल जाते, वही के पास। और एक चीज समझ लो, आपके पास विप्रो होगा तो और के होगा ही, और विप्रो तभी नहीं बेचेगा जब आपने और के भी नहीं बेचा होगा। बाकी अगर प्रॉफिट बुक कर लिया होता तो आपके पास कभी, आपके पास एमआरएफ भी रहेगा, मनपसंद भी रहेगा, वो एकदम क्लियर है। पर हम करते क्या है कि एमआरएफ को निकाल देते हैं। मोस्टली लोग यही करते हैं, हमारे इन्वेस्टर्स 100 रुपये में चीज़ लेते हैं, 130 हुआ वो बेच देते हैं, और 100 रुपये का माल 80 में नहीं बेचते। 5 साल के बाद देखते हैं जो 80 में नहीं बेचा है उसका भाव 20 है, जो 140 में बेच दिया उसका 700 है, तो उसको कभी भी पैसा नहीं मिलता है। तो मैं हमेशा ये मोड में रहता हूँ कि आप पूरा पोर्टफोलियो रखिए ना बॉस, जब बेचना चाहो तो सभी चीज़ एक साथ बेचिए। और यही वजह से नॉर्मल बंदा पैसा नहीं कमा पाता, और इसलिए उनको कोई स्मार्ट लोगों को या जो बंदे को कुछ एक्सपीरियंस है, नॉलेज है, जिसने 20 साल 25 साल 40 साल से परफॉर्मेंस किया है, उसको पैसा देते हैं। तो मैं बहुत श्योर हूँ कि अगर आप खुद नहीं कर पा रहे हो तो बेटर है कि आप कोई एक्सपर्ट को दीजिए, अदरवाइज नहीं तो ये बहुत से लोगों ने ये मार्केट को बहुत अच्छे से बदनाम किया है, तो आगे भी यही होगा। तो बेटर है कि आप कोई अच्छे लोगों के पास जाइए या आप अपना अक्ल निकाल दीजिए, खाली इन्वेस्टमेंट कीजिए, कुछ नहीं कीजिए। 15 साल 20 साल 25 साल के बाद देखिए, देखो 20 चीज़ आपने ली है तो 5 गधी है 5 घोड़े हैं, अपने को पता नहीं है कि कौन सा घड़ा होता है, हम गलत चीज़ बेच देते हैं। तो बेटर है कुछ भी नहीं बेचिए, देखते हैं क्या होता है।
आई थिंक आज आपको सबसे ज़्यादा क्लैप्स मिले हैं, सुबह से मैं कॉन्फ्रेंस में बैठी हूँ। तो आपका 30 साल का एक्सपीरियंस साफ नज़र आ रहा है। In the interest of time, I think we will close this session here. Many thanks to all of you. That was an extremely interesting and well-conducted panel. I think when I look at all of you, I can very clearly see that you all have actually elevated investing from a science to an art. Thank you, everybody.